And we are live. Good evening and welcome to the Real Logic Show. I'm your host, Charlie, and here we deep dive into all things movies, from the biggest of blockbusters to the hidden gems, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and why. So grab your coffee and let's talk movies. Man, it is so good to be here with you guys today. We're doing something a little different to the show. We're doing a live stream, and I plan to do a separate section of videos for after shows. I'm gonna have a whole separate playlist for these, and it's basically gonna be pop culture things, whether it be movies or TV shows that I enjoy or I'm interested in watching when they come out. I plan to be doing these live shows, so right after we watch the episodes, we can hop in here and we talk about it. I think it'd be a pretty cool segment, and just excited to share the hype with you guys. So yeah, today we're gonna be discussing Stranger Things season 5, part 1. That consists of the first 4 episodes of this new season that released today. Part 2 will be released on Christmas Eve. It's either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and that would be episodes 5, 6, and 7. And then on New Year's Eve will be part 3, the absolute finale, which will be episode 8, which is supposed to be a 2 hour movie, essentially. I just kind of want to break this down for you guys here. So these kind of streams are going to be a little bit different than our main channel kind of videos, which are a little more professional, more editing getting done to them. I eventually plan to hop into like OBS Studios and be able to work with the software in order to figure out how to get that all set up, like stream starting soon, the different cuts and pages you can have with them, even including like my logo and title on those videos. But we're new to the process, so we're just hanging out, really. And we're gonna talk about Stranger Things. I did take some notes while watching this show, and just some things that I did want to talk about. Uh, I think this season of Stranger Things so far may be one of the craziest seasons that we have seen through Stranger Things. I think the overall tone, this may be the darkest season we've gotten yet. And I was quite surprised going into season 2 after the first season and realizing like, whoa, like this show does have potential to take us down a more mature aisle. And I think season 4 did a really good job of that too. And I think the season's blowing it out of the water. I think it is a little too early to say my true full ranking on the season yet because we only have it's about less than half of the season release so far. So we're gonna get into this. I think I want to start doing this off by a spoiler-free section, and then we'll eventually break it down more in depthly through a spoiler section. Excuse me. So just overall vibe of the season, as I was just mentioning, dark. There is a lot of action throughout this, and I think this season heavily relates to how season 3 was portrayed. And what I mean by that essentially is seasons 1, 2, and 4, there was this mystery to be solved. Whereas in season 3, pretty much right off the bat, they told you what was happening. The Russians are opening up the portal to the upside down. And that's essentially where we're at in season 5 at the moment. um, this is only a spoiler free if you haven't seen, or if you've already seen season 4. But if you haven't seen it, you should probably go watch those before we deep dive into this. But it started this season really just showed you where we're at. End of season 4, we didn't necessarily win, but we didn't necessarily lose. We know Vecna's still out there, and that's kind of how the show starts. Season 3 and this season, they're more um how would I describe it? Like seasons 1, 2, and 4 were almost like you were being hunted by the upside down. Whereas in season 3 and now in this season, it's more so like you are the hunter. They are going after Vecna. Now, of course, it's still a threat. Like they know what they are up against, but it is a little bit different. And I think that's kind of what threw a lot of people off in season 3 was that it really stood out as a different season. It didn't necessarily fit as a Stranger Things. Some people claim that that's their favorite season, and I'm not going to argue against them. It's not my favorite season by no means, But I do think season 5 really follows that similar tone, if that kind of makes sense to you. Did it live up to expectations? We have part 1 out so far, so that's the first 4 episodes, almost half of it. I'm enjoying my watch. That's all I could say. So to give you a little rundown here, I never got into Stranger Things. I always blew it off. Everyone would talk about it, how good of a show this is, and I never really gave it the chance or the time of day. I just saw, it's a kid show, a bunch of kids in it, and it wasn't until 2 weeks ago when I sat down and I actually was like, you know what, I'm going to give this a chance. I knew this new season was coming out, and I said, if I enjoyed this, I was going to go ahead and do a live stream of this show. And here we are, and I'm loving the show, and I'm so happy that I did get to watch it. Tone, like I mentioned earlier, it is a darker tone. In terms of emotional, I think it's still too early to say. This is the last season, so I'm sure we are expecting a lot towards the end of whatever that may be. I will say every season of this show, even 3, which I didn't necessarily love, I love the finale. And this show does a really good job of tying things together. So I have a lot of hope in the Duffer Brothers for what they can accomplish with this. So that pretty much sums up like our spoiler-free review. So now we kind of want to break this down a little more in depthly. The first episode, you kind of get the whole gang back together. It starts off very positive on this light theme, so to speak. Whereas that's one thing I didn't necessarily. I liked the first season, okay, where you had the parents and the kids that were all like in 2 separate groups, but still like attacking the same problem, but doing their own thing. They didn't really talk about it together, and they came about it in different ways. I thought that was really cool. Season 2 was still the similar, but Joyce was more connected to the kids now, you could say. And that's when they introduced us to the Dustin Henderson relationship with Steve. Not relationship, but friendship. It really developed into like a really cool friendship. We had this older guy, cool guy. It's now kind of like, I don't want to say babysitting, but watching over little Dusty. And I thought that was pretty cool. Season 3 is when things started to take a turn. I think Will's character became absolutely insufferable to watch. And people started to split up, and that happened so much in season 4. And I love season 4. But season 4, half of the show wasn't in Hawkins. You had the Joyce Hopper Murray section that was taking place in Russia, which, mind you, a little side note, Murray, great character, and he totally shines in this 5th season too. He's not in it necessarily a lot, but the little bit we do get, he always seems to make me laugh. So you had them in Russia, then you had Mike and Will and Jonathan, and then that stoner guy out in the desert. They were all over the place, honestly. California to Utah, all over. And then you had the rest of the gang back in Hawkins. So it was kind of split up, and I didn't necessarily love that. But that's one thing that I think season 5 does really well is everyone is kind of in on this together. That was one worry I kind of had going into this. And I kind of had this worry throughout every single season. It's like, how do all the people in Hawkins not know what is going on after the Will Byers being resurrected from the dead? I mean, I'm sure they give you these little news articles of the gas leak kills Barb or whatever, but season 5, most people are aware of not necessarily everything that's going down in Hawkins, but they have a vague understanding of everything that is happening. So the first episode, it really starts off everyone getting in, you kind of setting the tone, and then last 5 minutes, my jaw stayed. Oh my God, I know. I'm gonna get into that once we deep dive into that last episode. And so like the second episode, I really enjoyed too, and that was the disappearing of Holly. And Holly was always younger in the earlier seasons, so we didn't really get much of her. But I will say, I think Holly as a character truly shines because once she gets abducted by Vecna, You get into this imagination world. It's part of the Upside Down where she meets Max while Max is in her coma. And I just love the dynamic between them. I thought that was so cool. Season or episode three, I'm not gonna say I didn't like, but I also didn't dislike. It kind of met me in this neutral middle ground. You have Elle at the end of episode two going into the Upside Down to go save Holly, and that's where she meets up with Hopper, and they kind of plan this stunt to get into. I believe it's Hawkins' lab is where they're at in the Upside Down, but it's basically where their headquarters is through the Upside Down, and it's our military that's controlling this section because they're trying to infiltrate it. The show makes me happy too, man. I was saying earlier in the stream, I started it 2 weeks ago, first time ever watching it, and I caught up today. So today I watched 6.5 hours of season four before starting season five today. And that was 4.5 hours of season five that was released today, which was kind of crazy. So all in all, I watched 11 hours of Stranger Things today. I probably should have spaced this better, but I loved it, and I couldn't be more happy that I did give this show a chance. Now, let's talk about that last episode real quick. That episode was amazing. It was about an hour and 20 minutes, hour 22 minutes. So you get pretty much a feature-length episode to conclude us there. And you have Joyce and the rest of the gang gathering all these kids who they believe Vecna is trying to kidnap and put into his house, which is in the Upside Down. But he's basically controlling them because they are weaker, and he's consuming their power to some degree. You have Hopper and Elle that are in, they've now gone into the lab, they've snuck in, and then you have the rest of the gang that's all trying to find Holly, but also they realize if they were able to save dipshit Dylan or Devin, I forgot the kid's name, who's the fat kid. And before this fat kid, I did not think I was gonna like this guy. He made me laugh every single time. We just talk about how everyone was saying episode 16, season two, oh, six, season two, Lost Sister was trash and not important. That is so true. And I was one of those people that said that too. I hated that episode, and I just watched that probably about a week ago for the first time. I felt like it was a waste of time. And I was like, man, I only have so much time in order to watch this entire show. If there's going to be more filler episodes like this, I was not necessarily having my hopes up too high, but how they finished that episode off with Elle going into the secret room, and they tell the audience, they kind of make it seem like Vecna is going to be in there, but all in all, we find out it is her lost sister. I didn't think Vecna was in that room, was 90% sure 8 was there. That is awesome. I truly thought it was Vecna, I'm not going to lie, but it did seem a little like too good to be true, like we're only on episode 4 and they have an ultimate reveal, and they did mention that they can't use their powers in that room. So you're right, it does take a little media literacy there to see that maybe it wasn't necessarily Vecna, but my jaw dropped when her sister showed up in there and they smiled at each other. And one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that the episode description says that Elle comes face to face with her foe or enemy. It was some word like that along the lines. But it was interesting that when she sees her sister, they both kind of smile at each other. So I don't know what their friendship's going to be like going forward, but we're just going to have to stay tuned to find out in a couple weeks. I had a feeling Will was going to get powers. I don't know how I almost knew. That's awesome. So when that first happened, I kind of sighed. I was like, oh, but then it didn't take much thought. It came quick to me. Like season 2, when they pretty much possessed Will that whole season, and then ever since he's been having these visions and flashbacks where he isn't necessarily the hive mind, but the hive mind is connected to him. So there is this paradox where he is a part of it. So he was feeling the burns from the Demogorgons, he's feeling that. So when that did happen, like I said, at first it took me a minute, but I actually ended up really enjoying it, and I'm so excited to see where we go from here from that point. It was just so cool. And then seeing Joyce's face with that all happening, how she was sheltering Will throughout pretty much this season so far, and he kind of like broke those chains with her. And then to see where we're at now, I just can't wait. I thought they were gonna do maybe like the first three episodes, and then four, five, six, and then finish off with seven and eight. But now I truly understand why they did the first four episodes, because it is a great cliffhanger, you could say, to end where we're at. And I thought it was great. 8:51 a.m. for me. I had to stay up for the. Wow, that is huge dedication right there, and that's why I love these kind of fan bases. Is what when you have. I mean, I would do that for Marvel, Star Wars. I'm a big UFC guy. I have late nights watching those kind of things. When you have a fan base that's so dedicated to be up those early hours, you got work too. Oh man. Well, hey, at least you got to watch an awesome show, and I hope it didn't disappoint you, man, because I was super pumped watching this. I thought it was great. Um, so I kind of want to get into like what the setting the stage of this all, like what the season really sets up. It pretty much shows us that Vecna is now in the real world. He has broken out and hell is breaking loose. So I'm very interested to see which kind of direction they seem to take that with. Group is, I'm not going to say they're fully split up, but they are kind of in separate areas, but they do have communication with each other, which I like more than how it was in season three and four. So I think they are doing a really good job with the pacing in just how all of that's going out, even like the early stakes. There isn't necessarily new mysteries. I think the only mystery we could really take from it is the whole sister thing. I want to figure out more with the sister because everyone dogged on that episode that everyone says is the worst episode. I was one of those people, but now the episode's becoming important, and I think the Duffer Brothers did that on purpose. And you know what? Kudos to them. I think that's awesome. So we get a little segment here, talk about some character arcs throughout it. Eleven's arc, pretty much the first time we see her, she's doing this training that Hopper sets up for her, and she's got to get under like 12 and a half seconds or whatever it was to low-key like that episode. I like it more now, I will say. I'm a huge fan of it now. In fact, I want to go back and watch it again. But all in all, I think it did kind of drag. I didn't like the gang and posse that was in that season 2 episode. But hey, look where we're at now. So sometimes you need those kind of episodes to bring you something as good as we have. Mike. I think Mike is having a more important character this season than he had in season 4. I really didn't like that whole arc that they had. It just felt like a wasted, useless character in the 4th season. Not saying he was necessarily bad. You're gonna get some sleep. Hey man, thanks for sticking around for the stream. I appreciate it, man. Glad you enjoyed the show and have a good time at work, man. Will, I hate Will's character. I will say, not right now, but season 3 and 4, I thought Will was insufferable. I absolutely hated Will's character. But now I think you could put him kind of towards the front. I think he has shined so much, and I wonder what the Duffer Brothers told Noah Schnapp to be like, yo, this has to happen or else XYZ. And whatever it was they did, man, did it work out, because even his personality has changed. And I don't want to go too in depth of what I mean by that, but Will, I think, is growing as a character, and I think that's awesome. Next up on my list, favorite character of the show, Hopper. Hopper, man. I love that guy. I loved him since the first episode we've seen him in. My only complaint with Hopper would have been in season 3 when he kind of turned into like this Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, deadbeat dad. Sure, he had some funny moments in season 3 when he was dealing with the whole Mike and Al situation, but all in all, I didn't like him till the end when we got the letter from him. And then, of course, that brings us into season 4, which basically he was in Rush the whole time. And I didn't necessarily care for that story arc, but I think he is shining in season 5 right now. You could say he's the highlight of the show. Him and Elle figuring this stuff out in the Upside Down. I can't wait to see what happens with Hopper. And I don't know if they're going to kill him because they did that fake death in the previous seasons. But I think that if you are going for an emotional, you know, sacrifice, man, what a choice Hopper would be. Next up on my list, we have Vecna. So in season 4, Vecna, obviously, I love the design. I love the way they made Vecna look. But I feel like there was potential that was kind of missing in season 4, especially when Elle got involved. And it almost seemed a little too easy. Now, we only see Vecna in the 4th episode of this season so far. And my God, when he steps out of that portal, I was locked in the entire time. It was absolutely unbelievable to watch. And you see just how powerful and how much of a menace he is going to be this season. When he is killing these soldiers and with no effort, and the bullets going through him, the flamethrowers, he like uses the force and creates this field around the flamethrower, and then he just pushes it back. It's some of the coolest FX that I've seen in modern television. I think it was awesome. So next up, I got Max's character. Max didn't come into, we see her in a coma, but we don't really see her till the 4th episode of this season. And she is inside of Vecna's imagination, inside of I don't, it's like a part of the Upside Down. She's not in like the typical Hawkins Upside Down. She's in the imagination realm of his brain. And she saved Holly, and they're together right now. So I'm very interested to see where their story arc is going to go. And I have a really good feeling she will come back to life at some point, and I can't wait to see how they pull that off. Any major deaths or twists so far? None really from our major characters. There were some really cool kills when Vecna, as I was just describing with all the soldiers, that was pretty awesome. But it's still a little too early to say on that, so we're just gonna have to wait. One thing I really love about Stranger Things is this is like disguised as like this supernatural sci-fi thriller, suspense, mystery. But when you really like deep dive deeper, this is a show about maturity every single season, and then not just seeing the kids, grow up throughout the seasons, but their relationships and friendships and like the themes and morals behind it. I think it is deep, and I think I can make a full video on that itself. So I think that is just so cool. Couldn't be more happy about it. I'm gonna go to a next section here, some villain and mythology reveal. So big lore connections. I think it was really cool how we got to see Will's, like when he first got into the Upside Down from the first season, or I'm sorry, yeah, the first season, and you see that Vecna was there all along, and how, we never saw him, of course, but how they do tie it in, I thought was fairly well done. We still need to get a little bit more on the Upside Down origin. We haven't heard too much about that yet, but I think they are going to do a little bit of revealing of that as we go on. Let's see what else I got here in my notes so far. So we're going to do a quick little ranking. Of course, it's going to be hard to judge this season right now because we only have 4 episodes so far. So to give you a little like backstory of where I stand with this show so far, I think the first season of Stranger Things, going in and coming out with that, there's a lot of shows out there where they're like, oh, you got to get through the first season in order for it to start picking up. Game of Thrones is a big example of that. And it's like, I don't want to sit through 10 hours. And I'm not dogging Game of Thrones. I'm not dogging it. I'm just saying, Stranger Things hooks you in the beginning. And I think for a show to do that, unknown show, I don't think the Duffer Brothers were too popular when this was coming out. A lot of new cast at the time. I think they hit it in the ballpark. Season 1 is going down as one of the best singular seasons of television that I have ever seen, hands down. Which brings us into season 2. I personally love season 2. I think season 2 is known to be the worst season. I think it gets way too much hate. I love the darker tones that season 2 brought to the show, that not that season 1 was necessarily lacking, but I don't think necessarily gave you enough of. It's like this fine middle ground in between there. With Will's possession in the second season and this connection to the Mind Flayer, I just thought that was so awesome. I thought that was so cool to see. It was dark, and how that that chain of events in season 2 has carried over to where we're at now, with Will developing powers from the hive mind. So I think season 2 becomes even more important now than ever before. Season 3 is a very controversial season. And I feel like it's either here or here for a lot of people. Season 3 is either going to be your favorite or it's going to be your worst. For me, I'm not saying it's a bad season by no means, but it is at the bottom. As what I was describing in the beginning of this video, season 3 feels like this filler season. Now, don't get me wrong, the finale of season 3 is a phenomenal finale. It's so good. The Battle of Starcourt, the color, the atmosphere, just the way it all went down. It was like one of their first, I think it was their first feature length episodes, or it was extended length episodes. It was like an hour 15, and it was the first time that they really did break past that like true hour mark. Season 3, I hate to put it on the bottom for me, but I do put it at the bottom just because there are better. Season 4, I think that's very similar because it's so much action going on in season 4. There's so many storylines that are happening all at once that they do come together, but I feel like you either have it at the top or bottom. I love season 4. I think season 1 and season 4 for me are neck and neck, right there. I think pound for pound, season 1 would be a better season, but season 4 had better highs. And yeah, I really can't pick one or the other. That's kind of where I have to leave that there. I think in terms of rewatchability, I'm gonna watch 4 a little bit more, but always gonna be a good time to go back and watch that first season of television. Now for season 5, 4 episodes in so far. I'm loving it. As I mentioned before, it is different than most of the other seasons, similar to 3. For my rankings right now, which are due pending because the season's not over, I have season. I'm gonna go 4. I think season 4, pound for pound, is the best season. Right underneath it, by a hair, season 1. Then I'm gonna have season 2. I like season 2. I think people hate on it too much. And then at the bottom, oh, I messed up. I didn't put in season 5. No, that works. Season 2. Then we're gonna go season 5. 4 episodes in so far. I don't dislike it. There's more to come, so I can't give a full ranking on it yet. But at the bottom, it's gonna be season 3 for me still. So that's my ranking right now. Once this season goes on, we will discuss this further. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about this too. I think it'll be really cool. So we did a ranking. If you guys have any questions, about where my stance is, if there's maybe something that I didn't cover in this video, I'd love for you to put it in the comments, and then we can have a discussion about it. Or even if it's something that you have anticipating for the following episodes, put it in the chat, and then we can see if your opinions, theories were right or not, and then we could go further into it when the next group of episodes drops. That about sums up, our first 4 episodes for me today. I had a blast watching not just the 4.5 hours that we got, but the full 11 hours of Stranger Things that I watched today to catch up before the season started. So I want to thank you guys for coming out. I love doing these breakdowns, and I think these lives are going to be real cool, especially once we start developing like a pretty cool fan base. I'm excited. If you're new here, please subscribe, like for more content. And I like starting chats, put something in the community tabs in the comments. So I just want to thank you guys, and this means a lot to me. It really does. I'm excited, and we will see you guys on Christmas Eve. Thanks for watching.